Really, really lovely to see you today on a very prestigious day. You're getting the big award tonight.
Yeah, and how nice is that? It's really lovely.
Does it feel special when you're asked to come back here to your home country to be celebrated?
Very much so, yeah. I mean, it's a really nice compliment, a really nice gesture, a really nice reason for coming back.
I mean, the publishing industry, I think we've got the best publishing industry in the world. You know, it's booming. The literary world is booming over here.
It is, it's fantastic, amazing amount of quality. And which is why I feel really good about getting the award, because there are so many good authors and good books. I mean, obviously Britain has a great literary section. The real literary writers here are outstanding. And there are tremendous newcomers, and women's fiction in particular is just sensational right now. And so if I hadn't have got the award, I'd have been perfectly happy. You know, there's plenty of other worthy recipients, but to get it feels very special against that kind of context.
This is where you still feel you belong, and obviously you're an international figure now. You live in New York. I know you come back and forth, but as a literary figure, Britain is you.
It is really, because when you write a book, obviously that's your whole life going into that book. It's the whole sum of the author's life and experience goes into the book. And of course most of that, well, I suppose 2/3 of it probably is still in Britain. I'm very old now, so I have to calculate this. But yeah, certainly my formative years were spent here. My reading is the only thing that prepares you for being a writer. So reading here at the British libraries and stuff like that, that's really what created and enabled my life. So getting back here, it does feel very special. Although I'm not going back to Birmingham this time, which is where I actually grew up, and that is really where my roots are in a serious way, because Birmingham, manufacturing city, they made things, they made useful things with the kind of quiet pride. And that's what I aspire to. I would like to be a sort of Birmingham artisan of the literary world, and so that's where my roots are, and that's what created the success.
Does Birmingham celebrate you?
No, I mean, it's funny, Birmingham has moved on so much. I love going back there because the DNA of Birmingham is still visible, but since I've been away, I left to go to university and haven't really been back much since. It's changed an awful lot. And yet it hasn't. It's a really fascinating proposition.
You were born in Coventry, and Coventry's about to be the City of Culture in 2021, which is a very, very big deal. Would that be something, if they were to ask you as a very famous product of the city?
I don't know really, because I was born there, absolutely, but I moved to Birmingham when I was 4. So I think it's a little bogus to say I'm a Coventry person. They keep claiming me, they want me to be a Coventry ambassador and all that kind of thing. But I have to say, in all honesty, I've got very little memory of it. And I would say I'm much more of a Brummie than a Coventrian.
Did you ever have a Brummie accent?
I did, yeah. I got something wrong with me when I was about 7, and they weren't sure what it was, and I went into hospital for about 4 weeks. And during those 4 weeks, I got the most shocking Birmingham accent, which I'm not ashamed of at all. I like it, but my mother was quite keen when it faded away again afterwards.
Your story of how you came to writing, it's so fascinating and inspirational, because you came to writing late, and it was sort of like, something that you fell into as a necessity, really, because what you thought you were going to do ended not very well.
It disappeared from under me, yeah. I mean, and you know the world. I was the guy that is talking in your ear all the time, saying, "Come on, hurry up, shut up, get that guy off." I was that guy, and I loved it. It was a great, great job. British television back when I worked there was just paradise. It was lovely, and I'm old enough that I was one of those who thought you got a job and that was it for your whole life, and then I would retire at 60 with a gold watch, and that would be it. And that would have suited me fine, because it was a great job and I loved it. But this is how I always put it. I loved it, and then one day my boss said something to me that just made it impossible to continue. He said, "You're fired." And that's how it all began. And so the writing was not an ambition. I'd never thought about it before. I'd been a reader all my life. And I thought, what am I going to do next? And I just thought, you know what, I'll try and write a book. And it would not have happened if I hadn't lost that job.
So where did Jack Reacher come from?
Well, having worked in television for so long and the theatre before that, I knew that you can't design these things. The harder you work at listing what he ought to be, what he should be, the worse it gets. You know, it becomes forced and it becomes wooden and cardboard. So I designed him by not thinking about it at all. I just metaphorically closed my eyes and typed, and he was what came out. And obviously that means that he has resonance somewhere deep in my past. I think all of our past, the knight-errant myth, the guy who shows up and solves our problem and then moves on, which we all deeply need, I think, internally. You know, if we have a problem, wouldn't it be great if somebody would just come and fix it for us and then disappear so we didn't have those gratitude issues afterward? I think we all yearn for that, and I think that's why he strikes such a chord. Because, you know, people do have problems. They have miserable, desperate lives sometimes, and they run into crises and they run into things that they can't deal with. It would be great if somebody came and fixed it, and that's what Reacher is. He's this mysterious force who just shows up, solves the problem, and moves on.
Do you think in our world today he's even more relevant and needed than he was maybe when you started?
Totally. I mean, absolutely. Several things that happened along the way. You know, Reacher's first book was 1997, and then 4 years later came 9/11, which was a kind of big crisis where people wanted security and they wanted help. Then came the financial crash in 2008, 2009, where people felt trapped by the burden of debt and so on, and so Reacher's lifestyle, he owns nothing, possesses nothing, doesn't want anything, that suddenly became very, very attractive. And now, you know, people are burdened down with jobs and bills and mortgages and all that kind of stuff. So his free lifestyle becomes very, very appealing.
Was there a part of the creation of Jack Reacher, you said something deep inside you, you obviously parted company with your TV career under quite unpleasant circumstances. Was there something festering inside you that thought, oh, I can't fix it, but I'm going to try and come up with someone who can?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, what I was doing for myself, I did it all for myself, but I was in the same spot as millions of other people, and therefore that's why it worked. And I actually did, you know, the first many books, the first 6 or 8 books, the bad guys are all named after those bosses that fired me. And so it was very much catharsis for me, and I think by extension catharsis for other people, because it wasn't just me. You know, in the TV business, hundreds of people were fired, and in industry generally, thousands of people are fired. Millions of people around the world are in the same spot. And so I think the satisfaction that I got resonated with everybody else.
And how did the film side of it happen? Is it something that you approach someone to do, or someone approaches you, and how does it work?
Well, it works that it's almost the exact reverse of publishing. Publishing looks at everything and buys very little. Hollywood buys everything without looking at it, just in case it might be useful later. Sometimes in order to squash something when they've already got a project that's similar or whatever, they buy everything. And so the initial sale is easy to make, and then the development, as they call it, is the hard part. Is it actually going to happen on the screen? And for me, it took a very long time. In fact, it took 15 years from the first option deal to the first movie actually opening in a cinema.
And why did it take so long?
It just does. I mean, you know, the example I always give, ER, you know, that very, very famous TV series that ran forever, that took 20 years to get on the screen. So anything less than that is pretty speedy by Hollywood standards.
Why do you think it resonates? I mean, the books have been phenomenal. The films have been a smash hits, haven't they? Why?
I think because, well, Tom Cruise,
they're a great watch, actually. But
yeah, you know, they were very well made. Really, it was because they were big studio productions, absolutely, but they had an independent feel simply because the entire cast and crew wanted to do this guy. They wanted to do, you know, these stories. So they were really personally very invested and very enthusiastic about it. It was such fun for me because I had 100 people around who knew Reacher just as well as I did. They were telling me, you know, what Reacher would say and what he would do. It was very gratifying that he had migrated outward into people's imaginations like that.
And Tom Cruise was aware as well of what Jack Reacher would have done in certain situations?
Yeah, he'd read all the books, and he had all his own theories, and he could quote from the books, and they were bantering between each other all the time, coming up with quotes from the books. It was great.
And You are now, am I right in thinking that it's now going to move to television?
Yeah.
Is that actually happening?
It is. It's happening right now, actually. We're trying to get the deal in place, whichever platform wants it the most. I think it was because that deal was done, that specific cruise deal was done a long time ago in 2005. And back then in 2005, this sort of streaming television thing wasn't a thing. Nobody had ever really heard of it then. So obviously back then you would go to feature films. I think now, for choice, you would go to television. Television is really pretty good right now.
Yeah, I was at the BAFTAs last night. Who's going to be Jack Reacher on TV?
Well, it's a process that we, first of all, we're going to do the deal, and then we're going to look for the actor, and I want people to make suggestions, because my readers were not happy with Tom Cruise, because Cruise is a lovely guy and he's a great actor, but he did not have the physicality that Reacher has in the books. And the readers found that to be unsatisfactory.
I mean, the height,
Yeah, the height and the bulk and the sort of menace that if Reacher steps into a room, everybody's just a little bit worried because he's an animal. And Tom Cruise couldn't do that really. And so I'm asking for suggestions, get on my Facebook page and say, who do you want? And I'd love to cast a complete unknown, which I think we can in television, a complete unknown who just fits the part perfectly.
And how did you cope with kind of all the comments that came from viewers saying, why did you allow them to do this to our beloved Jack Reacher, put in someone who's 5'7" when he should be 6'5"?
Well, I was just thrilled that they said beloved. I mean, back at the beginning, literally, if somebody had said to me, you're going to create a character where people get upset about who plays them in the movie, I would have said, yeah, I'll take that deal. And so it was really, it was awkward because I like Tom Cruise. He's a really nice guy. He's a good friend. And so he was suffering from the criticism, and I felt sorry about that. But basically, I just felt thrilled that anybody cared.
And he's cool about you choosing another...
Yeah, he's totally cool. He's going to stay on as an executive producer in the series, which I really want, because the other thing that people don't see about Cruise is he's a great theoretician about story. He's spent all his life telling stories, and he's really good at it. So we need him on board. And yeah, he's totally happy about it.
When we look at the numbers for your book sales, I mean, to say they're mind-boggling, I mean, 100 million. And this whole thing about, I have read separately that every 3 seconds, every 5 seconds, every 9 seconds, or every 13 seconds, yeah, somewhere in the world, someone is buying a Jack Reacher book. Which one of those is accurate?
Well, it depends on the time of year. When the book is new and fresh and just out, it's probably like 10 every second, and then of course later in the year it slows down a little bit. So on average, I believe it's somewhere about 8 or 9 seconds. And but and it sounds horrible to say, but we've given up counting because it's just we'd have to have a full-time staff counting them. It's just amazing.
It's a nice position to be in, isn't it?
It ain't too bad, yeah.
Crime fiction is booming. Crime fiction has overtaken general fiction in terms of its popularity amongst readers. Why is that? I mean, we know the particular appeal of Jack Reacher, but we cannot get enough of crime fiction right now. Why is that?
I think it's because you get a great crime novel, of which there are so many right now, great novels, and it has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you read it in a couple of days, and the problem is resolved in a couple of days. Closure is achieved, order is restored, satisfaction is arrived at. People feel, oh, good, relieved, everything's all right now. And that is such a contrast to real life, as we know. Everything drags on forever in real life and never really gets solved at all, at a national level and at a personal level, especially with crime. Crime is a sort of low-level, squalid, grubby thing in people's lives. And if you're the victim of a crime, I hope it doesn't happen, but if your house is broken into or something, they won't catch the guys. You won't get your stuff back. You live with a kind of low-level buzz of frustration and disappointment about that. But in a book, you bet they'll find the guys and you will get your stuff back. So you love that alternative.
Do you ever encounter any snobbery within the literary world, amongst the people who perhaps think the Booker Prize is everything, and there is this idea you've sold so many books, and that is slightly looked down upon?
Yeah, it's a strange inversion, isn't it? That something that is patently attractive to 100 million people is looked down upon. But it doesn't bother me really, because there's a compensation in the sales. The 100 million critics that count for me are the actual readers, and the newspaper critics and so on can say what they like. Although I will say that over the 20 years I've been doing it, they've become increasingly kinder and kinder, and kind of more realistic about it. I think media commentary in general is now getting more in tune with what people like. Like football, for instance. I was just reading the paper today. Every paper has got like a 20-page section about football, whereas in the past it would just be one page on the back of the paper. In other words, people are taking seriously what real consumers do, which I find to be sensible, honestly.
We've just mentioned football, so I'm going to have to ask you about Aston Villa.
Fingers are crossed, but one thing I've learned in my long, long life is that Aston Villa will always break your heart.
Are you expecting to have your heart broken?
May 27th, isn't it, the playoff final? I'm expecting it to be broken, because I feel it's always safer to expect that with the Villa, and they might surprise me.
I used to go watch Villa all the time during the Paul Merson era and everything, and Dion Dublin, the glory days.
Yeah.
You're right, it's painful, isn't it?
It can be, yeah, but the high is when the great days were great. The problem is that it's a long time ago, really, since you went down there expecting to win.
So tonight you're going to win. We know you're going to win. What have you thought about what you're going to say?
I just want to say, actually, the thing that really, really impressed me from the very beginning is how lovely everybody is in publishing. They're really nice people. And so I do feel weird. I'm getting a prize for having the best life ever. I should really be giving them a prize. That's probably what I'm going to say.
Do you ever feel like driving past the Granada studios and like waving, hello?
I've still got good friends from the Granada days, and one of us was going to make it. It's just a statistical fluke that it's me. It could have been any of them, and I still like them all. We're still good friends, and of course, they don't live in Manchester anymore. They've had to go somewhere else to find a job, but I see them from time to time, and they were happy days, and nobody can take that away.
Okay. Where are we at with so Jack Reacher on television, and the book? You've just done a one with Will Trent, haven't you? The characters together.
That's a short story I did with Karen Slaughter, who's a good friend of mine, and we for years, probably 10 years, we've said we should write a story together, and finally we have, and it was good fun because people that know Karen Slaughter's series, Will Trent is her character that appears in this story. I have a secret theory she based him on me. He looks like me a little bit, and I think secretly, she won't admit it, but I think secretly she modelled him on me. So I'm writing Reacher and him. It's sort of two versions of me.
Maybe Reacher is you, actually, maybe on a subconscious level. Who do you see when you've got me thinking straight away, you see. Who do I see as Jack Reacher? I'm thinking Richard Madden or somebody.
Well, the problem is I see Reacher as not all that good looking. And the problem is, he's just a rough, tough guy. And all actors are handsome, that's the problem. So really, in my mind at the beginning, there was an England rugby player called Lawrence Dallaglio. And I would never say this to his face, but he's a big, not very good looking guy. And, big, huge hands and everything. That's who I pictured as Reacher, that type of a physique. And if they can find an actor, an unknown actor who looked like that, that would be perfect.